Hi, and welcome to the Headforwards podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark, and today we'll be talking to Jon Dodkins, Technology Director
Hello.
at OVO, about the effectiveness of Agile in the workplace and what challenges he sees in day-to-day activity. So, firstly, welcome, Jon.
Hello.
Tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me. I am, as you said, I'm a tech director at OVO Energy, which is a retail energy company. Hopefully, people have maybe heard of them. I think we're maybe third or fourth biggest energy company in the UK, and I look after a bunch of teams that are doing cool stuff. Mostly in the area of sort of engineering enablement, so things like developer experience and thinking a lot about how to make teams more effective and efficient. We have about 300 or 400 software engineers, uh, and yeah, sort of 4.5 million customers. So we are all about green energy and taking domestic customers on that path to zero carbon living. So obviously, green energy is something that not everyone can use right now, but we're really committed to what that looks like for everyone in their homes. So we have loads of different products that we're building. It's quite a scaled organization. So yeah, Agile's definitely features heavily.
Well, it just leads nicely on to my first question, actually. So, I mean, you've been in the tech industry for a while now, and seen various implementations of Agile at a few businesses that you've worked with. What do you see as the biggest challenges currently?
Yeah, and some of those experiences were with Headforwards. That's I've worked there for a time and got a special place in my heart actually, Headforwards. So yeah, so very much seeing small companies that were looking to scale their products, as you work with as well, Tom, and over in other places where it's much more scaled up. So challenges with Agile, definitely many. I'm sure you see them as well. Uh, yeah, I think Agile's brilliant. Like I think it's been such an important movement in the industry, and certainly what came before Agile, I think everyone agrees was awful. I don't think anyone wants to go back to those times. I mean, it's 20 years ago, over 20 years ago, wasn't it? The Agile
Yeah.
manifesto was written. So I definitely think we are seeing challenges though. And I think that part of that comes from what's, essentially trying to follow something by the letter. I mean, I'm looking at you because I know you know what these challenges are all about, but somehow some things automatically become dogma over time, and I do wonder whether there's a conversation to be had about what comes next. And I actually think a lot of people are having that conversation actually.
So it's kind of an interesting take that we've had on it as well, and seeing Agile as almost a buzzword that businesses are using, where whether they've fully embraced the concept of Agile as opposed to just the processes that Agile suggests you should use.
Yeah.
I've certainly seen in previous places I've worked at where it's a token gesture to Agile, where they'll say, "Yeah, we do Agile. What do you do? We do stand-ups."
Yeah.
And that's about it. And I've certainly seen the buzzword aspect of it becoming pretty prevalent in across
Yeah.
the industry.
I feel like the term agile mindset has been the last sort of five, maybe a few more years, but the last sort of 5 or so years, I feel like that's a really important corrective that I'm hearing more and more is like it's agile mindset, and it's sort of trying to jolt people out of this. No, it's not just delivering another project. I mean, that's what we've done projects up to this point. Oh, what's this? An agile project. Let's deliver this. Um, and so I think it really varies, and I think that using agile as a lens is an important start. Maybe I know probably talk more about the kind of phases that you go through. But I think there's definitely some pitfalls there, and I think there's definitely a time where trying to almost force things back to agile maybe isn't beneficial. And sometimes I think you need to sort of move past it and maybe come up with something yourselves that's sort of co-created. And actually some of the best agile coaches I know understand this as well, and they aren't talking about agile all the time. They're not constantly referring to the holy text. They're talking about co-creating something amongst yourselves, and drawing on the skills and diversity you have in your teams and an organization.
So that kind of ties into a question that I was going to ask as well, in that I'm going to go two ways with this, but initially, do you see there being any current viable alternatives that we should be looking at?
I think I actually think that the danger of even thinking about it like that means no, like I don't have another viable alternative. Like, I actually think that depending on where an organization's at when they start, it's usually a good idea to have something to start you off with. And I do wonder whether there are some organizations that have been running with Agile for a while, and actually they need to they're stuck, or they've stagnated, or experiencing inertia. I think sometimes then it's not useful to keep hitting the same notes if it's really not working, and actually there could be benefits there to putting it aside and doing something else. But certainly with an organization that's just never even thought about these things and is struggling with the very things that were being struggled with prior to 2001, whatever, that's where Agile's best, right? Is where there's lots of upfront planning, the customer's not getting value, lots of big batch deliveries that this isn't what I wanted. And a team that's unhappy. I think if that's your starting point, Agile's perfect. But I think lots of organizations are in different starting points just from the way that they've scaled, or the way that they've started their own journeys.
Yeah, I mean, I've generally seen Agile as a framework that should be easy to go back to if you're struggling, and in some of the ways that you've just mentioned. Certainly from a training wheels perspective, if you embrace the Agile mindset, which is what you mentioned earlier, that in my view has been quite a useful go-to for areas in business that might be experiencing difficulties with delivery or with happiness in the team. But I also think, in line with what you've just said, if Agile is something that has been tried to be implemented in an industry, it can be really hard to then suggest, actually, we need to implement real Agile. Agile. How do you describe that to somebody that has had an Agile engagement put upon them for the last X many years, where it is a token gesture to Agile, and then you come in and say, you know what, we need to do Agile properly, and they go, well, I've been doing this for 5 years. Why?
That you're playing the organization in that scenario, but also individuals. So it might be that people are hired into a company that have had a really bad experience individually, and then they come and join a team, and they join a new venture or a new product or what have you. And the Agile coach comes in and says, right, let's get you all Agiled up. And and I think that could, the emotional baggage from a bad implementation could be sufficient that it's not the, just hearing the word sets people off onto some sort of PTSD reaction. So I think that's a really good point. It's the organization's past, but also individuals that are then brought into the organization. It might be much better to say, do you know what, we're going to co-create something ourselves. And, I think the team chartering thing, I know, we should talk about other suggestions, but I think team chartering is a really good thing, because you could come together and then really decide what are your values, rather than let's read the values from the Agile Manifesto.
I was going to ask, actually, as another one of my questions is have you seen effective implementations of alternatives? So you mentioned one there, I think.
Yeah, I mean, no, I haven't. I mean, because Agile is the movement. Certainly, the last 20 years, I haven't seen anyone, because there are some other sort of radical systems and things that organizations use, but I definitely see increasingly books and new frameworks coming out that don't mention Agile, or at least they pay their respects to the doctrine. No, I shouldn't say that, because I love Agile, and I really don't want to give the impression, I started a LinkedIn chat the other day that I was just trying to be provocative, and just start a bit of a conversation. But I did find myself having to say, I do love it. I do think it's amazing. I just think that when you look at some of the challenges that we're facing 20 years later, I mean, they can't possibly be exactly the same. I actually do think that a lot of them are the same. And, you're smiling because I'm sure the organizations that you come across are very much struggling with the same thing. So why is that? Why is Agile not working then? Certainly if they've tried to leverage it, is there something inherent in Agile that could be improved upon? I think is the question.
Generally in the workplace at the moment, we are hailing neurodiversity as such an important part of what we are able to do moving forwards in industry. Do you think there's some place in the Agile manifesto or Agile as an implementation where we could review it from a different perspective and create something from it?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't have that because I think that would be by definition wrong for me to say, here's what I think. Get my scroll out and unravel it and read it. But no, I mean diversity. I mean diversity of all kinds, right? Like I'm sure there probably was neurodiversity in the room, but there certainly wasn't gender diversity or ethnic diversity at the ski lodge in 2001. I don't know how many people it was, but I mean, someone can correct me if there were any women there, but I think it was all guys. So I think that we are realizing, it shouldn't have taken so long to realize this, but diversity does generate the best ideas and the best innovative ways forward. So, I'm not saying, maybe there should be another ski lodge visit for a much more diverse group. Maybe, I mean, that might be kind of cool, like to get a load of people that are sort of thought leaders from different backgrounds, say go skiing for a couple of weeks, but also, get a whiteboard out and write some stuff down. I mean, maybe that would kind of be cool, but I still think we'll fall into some of the same pitfalls, which is people looking for something like a religious movement. I mean, actually, I think that the way I think about Agile is more like a genre of music that's been built upon. Like if you think about blues or something in the background to so many genres now, we don't necessarily need to talk about blues all the time if you're playing rock music or something. Like, it obviously falls down a little bit because it's music and not talking, but the point is it's a genre that's led to more and more. I mean, these things aren't better than one another either, but they've led to more variation, and variation leads to evolution.
Yeah, and I think it's a very valid point. I think where the Agile Manifesto was 20 or so years ago, it probably has been diluted by organizations, and not necessarily in a bad way or not necessarily in a good way, but actually the original problems that people were trying to solve, that, as you've mentioned already, that many of them do still exist. I mean, we experience the same challenges in the workplace now as we did then. How do we create a predictable work cycle so that we're able to estimate accurately and give the business an accurate forecast of what our spend is going to be on a particular product? And that is the cornerstone of how businesses want to work, right? We want to build something, we want to know how much it costs to build it, to be able to work out actually if this is going to make sense for us to implement it. Where do you think we'll go next with this?
I thought you were going to ask me how to make it predictable, because I was really hoping you weren't going to ask me that, because
I mean, that's why I can ask.
I mean, I wrote that on the LinkedIn post just to get a reaction, because we know that the reality of building software is not predictable. I can't remember whether it was on that post or elsewhere. Someone said it was like movements of weather, which I love. I love that as an analogy, but very difficult for you to talk to a client about the changing weather and the winds and stuff when they're looking for a cost forecast. But where are we going next? Like, well, I definitely think, like I said, it's not all bad. Like, I think there's really great things happening. Like I just looking across the your own networks of Agile practitioners, there's some really great stuff happening, and there's really very much like building on the shoulders of giants. And as I said, there's books and frameworks coming out that are not necessarily mentioning and harking back exactly to the text. So I think as soon as you're able to let go of the exact and really go back to the mindset and and have the sense of where it was going, and understand at the core, what are we trying to do here? We're trying to recognize that things change in software. We're trying to recognize that we should always prioritize customer value. I think the documentation thing is hilarious, that there's this. I mean, we should look at the reputation, the negative reputations that Agile has, and laugh about them. But also, there's a reason for those things. Even though it says we value things on the left more than things on the right, or however it's phrased, it's not that we don't value these other things. Certainly, people thinking that Agile means don't document anything. That's a really good example of how that's actually probably slowed us down a little bit, because now at OVO we're doing things called RFCs, or requests for comment, and that's a way that we very much write down certain system design or structural software decisions that we're making, or even ways of working things, and invite comments from SMEs or relevant people that will be affected or might want to leverage it themselves in their teams. So that's very much about writing things down and documenting, and having that audit trail, so that later, 5 years down the road, or even a year down the road, when something seems a bit funky or there's some tech debt rearing its head, you've got a really useful record. I'm not sure. Maybe we could have got there quicker if we weren't had this sort of like, documentation's bad because we're doing agile. Not that, that's sort of exaggerating to make a point there, but so yeah, I do wonder whether some of the wording could be improved, or maybe there isn't a perfect way of wording this thing, and actually we should focus on the empowerment, the co-creation, the diversity, and the team. And I think the team is a really important part that does come through on agile, really valuing the team and what they do, and solving problems together. Maybe they need to solve all of these problems and not have too many set guides and the kind of governing controls as to how they should solve that problem. But yeah,
it is. It's an interesting point, actually. What are the things that we look at in agile at the moment that are, the bad things of agile, or the misinterpretations of agile? And there is also an interpretation of agile that it's not very structured, or it's not very organized. And actually, it's one of the most structured ways of if you follow the manifesto and the recommendations for the initial structure, it is one of the most structured ways of delivering a project, with the idea of creating that predictability, as you mentioned earlier. So, how do we solve the predictability problem? I can't answer that either. I don't know. But certainly, it's where I go back to mentioning the training wheels. Actually, if you start with a framework, there's no need to stick to it, but it gives you a start point. And I think one of the most valuable parts for me of agile is the fact that it encourages you to retrospect regularly. Every iteration or every week, depending on the type of agile that you're doing, you should be looking at your working practices and learn how your team can evolve based on your team, not based on anybody else. We talk about velocity and things like that, and I've worked at companies where they try and compare velocity across teams, and when you're then trying to describe to them, actually you can't do that. It doesn't make sense to compare the velocity of one team with the velocity of another team, because the teams are very individual. That starts to get lost where the interpretation of agile has been taken to mean something that it isn't.
I think the it's almost like it's trying to solve the reality problem, or lack of reality problem. Agile was. Some of that's predictability, some of it's as I say, empowerment and trusting the team. Like, trust is obviously mentioned I think more than once, and I think that's important. And maybe that reality is that you can't predict it. Maybe that reality is you can. But I think that's the essence of agile, is like, let's just be real about what it means to build valuable software, and let's hold the mirror up to this crazy, sometimes chaotic process that value emerges from. And I guess the reality of building software now, has that changed at all? And I think some things are fundamentals that run throughout. Some things are probably starting to change, where just a new generation. 20 years is a sort of a generational shift, isn't it? Pretty much. I suppose you probably say that sort of 30 years as a. So I'm not probably the best judge. There's people starting in software that are 20 years younger than me or something. So what's their reality, and what's the reality that they're working in, and maybe we should focus on that. And I think a lot of places are, like I said, it's not all bad. I think having that, seeing it as the mirror that you're holding up to the process and the organization and the team, I think it's the right thing. But I guess there could be an anti-pattern where we're trying to perhaps force things to refer to it, and then it becomes a little bit of a dogmatic flavor to it.
The market has changed hugely. We've gone from creating software that you buy once to nearly everything is subscription based now, because people don't expect you to be able to release something and keep it for a year. They want updates throughout the year. And actually, it was an interesting analogy of this, which I think Agile was a great implementation for, was the gaming industry, and the fact that you used to buy a physical disc or a cartridge or whatever it was. And now, if you buy the physical media, by the time you get home, there's been so many changes that you have like a 5 gig update file as soon as you put that disk in your machine or whatever. And Agile, the only way to deal with that was by having a reactive process that allowed change and allowed things to be fixed on the fly or to changing customer requirements. And I think that's one of the great benefits of implementing an agile process in your organization.
Yeah, I mean, as the languages change as well, like presumably, the levels of abstraction that engineers or software developers are working at is changing all the time, right? I mean, we should talk about it. I shouldn't talk about AI. You should have an expert on your podcast to talk about AI, because I think that would be a fascinating conversation about where that's taking software development. But hopefully the best way we can look at this is making the things that were in the Agile manifesto just table stakes. And I think maybe that is the case already, right? It's just table stakes to have that stuff in place. And the idea that we're referring to, we need to be welcoming changing requirements. You want people to go, yeah, duh. Obviously, that's where we want to get to, is say, yeah, that's all red now. What's the next set of challenges, and what's the next set of mindset changes that we probably need to promote through. I mean, the values are great. I mean, the principles, I think, are the next level down, right? But I think that if you can stick with the values, you're probably going to be set pretty well.
For fear of keeping you talking too long on this, I've got one more question, but I could probably talk about this for days. Is there any literature which you have found really helpful to you in either your role or the implementation of Agile, or solving the problems that you've seen in Agile, that you think is worth sharing?
Well, I think that the focus on the team is really important, and my mind is very much stuck in a scaled context at the moment. So the way I think about solving some of the problems that we're seeing at OVO is very much how do you interact between teams in a way that's not only effective but very clear and doesn't create any unnecessary overhead, because there's always going to be management overhead, right, and an orchestration problem when you're at scale. But a book that we're getting a lot of value out of in OVO is Team Topologies. And I think it's so good because I'm not actually sure it mentions Agile very much. Maybe that's something that I like about it that I didn't realize when I was reading it, just because it felt like it was, building on the shoulders without having to then refer to it. But I really like it because it's paying close attention to the Conway's law, which is often referred to in conference talks and literature, and it has been for a long time, where you're destined to, if you're not familiar, listeners aren't familiar with Conway's law, it's basically from the 60s, a guy called Melvin Conway that was talking about system design, but very much, this is a good example of something that a long time ago is still very, if not more relevant today. But he said that you're destined to produce a system or software that resembles your communication structures in your organization. So the idea being, the reverse of Conway's law is to say, let's structure our organization, our teams, our interactions, so that it's destined to deliver the software that we want, or the outcomes that we want to bring about. So Team Topologies is really dialed into that, and it refers to different interaction modes that you have between your teams. You might be an enabling team or a value stream team. Again, a lot of the language is super familiar, taken from Lean, and some of the recent really popular takes on this kind of stuff. And I really like that it talks about the chartering side of it as well. So I think they have one like a team canvas in there that you can use to get together in your team. The authors are quite active on LinkedIn and social media, so they often post a lot of free stuff to allow you to sort of grab a lean canvas with your team and kind of charter, what are we all about, what's our purpose, what's our interaction mode, and stuff like that. And I think we're getting a lot of value out of that, and it's something that you need to iterate on as well. And I think that's another thing I think super important about certain things. I think some people think that organizational structure or the ways you interact with between teams is something like set in stone. I really don't believe that. I think you should be open to iterating on absolutely everything, because everything's so fast changing. You need to make sure you just keep reviewing that and almost retro at a macro scale in the organization. So yeah, team topologies.
Brilliant. Thank you. Well, thank you very much for joining us in the Headforwards podcast. It's been great talking to you and
Thank you.
your thoughts about Agile and the where we could go next with it, as we're, as an Agile company, super interested in the evolution and how things could change for hopefully the better. In the meantime, good luck with everything at OVO, and we will speak to you soon, hopefully.
Thanks. Thank you. Thanks, Tom.
Cheers.